I'll start now. Okay, Chairman, we are now live.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Housing Supervisory Board. I'm Councillor Mark Jones, Chairman of the Board, or Chair of the Board. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers shown on the screen. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee member experience technical difficulties during the meeting, you should immediately contact the designated IT officer on the number they have already supplied you with. Everyone is requested to mute your microphones unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate the desire to speak. Do not use it for anything else, so that it is clear for who is asking to speak. The debate must be heard by those listening to the audio feed. As Chair, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any disclosable pecuniary interest they have in any items on the agenda. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, to introduce themselves each time before they speak. So this is for those who are listening, so they know who's speaking. The next thing, we lost, unfortunately, Julie Files, who was helping with this Canovi, and she was a very well respected member. We've put a lovely picture of Julie's smile onto the viewing platform, and it says this is the board that was set up. We have an invaluable and dedicated support from our committee officer, Julie Files. Sadly, Julie passed away peacefully on Monday, the 1st of February. Julie was a highly valued member of the Legal and Democratic Services team and respected by colleagues across the council. Please will you join me in a moment's silence to pay our respects to Julie and offer our condolences to Julie's family and close colleagues at this difficult time. So if we just have a moment's silence. Okay, thank you for that, and God bless to Julie. Okay, item 1 on the agenda is apologies, and Pauline D has given her apologies, hasn't she, Shelley?
Yes, apologies received from Pauline D, and there's no substitute.
Okay, item 2 is disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interest in any matter to be discussed which is not included in the register of interests, and leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. So myself, Mark Jones, I represent Caboyne, Salatin and Western Rin. I have no pecuniary interest. Rob Gittins, please.
Oh yeah, Councillor Rob Gittins, member for Jesuitine. I'm present and have no interests.
Vince Hunt.
Oswestry West. I have no pecuniary interest, but apologies if I keep dropping in and out. Our internet is provided by Airband, who are not performing today at any level, so I keep dropping out the meeting, but I will do my best to participate, Chair.
Thank you. Simon Jones.
Yeah, Simon Jones, councillor for Shawbury Division. Present, and I have no pecuniary interest.
Okay, Heather Kidd.
Councillor Heather Kidd, Shropshire councillor for Cherbury and Worthing. I have no pecuniary interests.
Okay, Cecilia Motley.
Councillor Cecilia Motley, Corvedale Division. Here I am, and I have no pecuniary interests.
Excellent. Tony Parsons.
Councillor Tony Parsons for Basin Hill, Colham and Sutton, and I have no pecuniary interests.
And finally, Keith Roberts.
Yeah, Keith Roberts, councillor for Radbrook at Shrewsbury, and I have no pecuniary interests.
Excellent. Can I ask the office holders to introduce themselves, please?
Good afternoon, members. It's Mark Barrow, Executive Director of Place, Shropshire Council.
Shelley Davis, Committee Officer.
Hello, it's Jane Trethewey, Assistant Director, Homes and Communities.
Hi, it's Harpreet Ray, Lead Director of Development for Cornelvie Developments.
Jamie Burns, Housing Development Manager.
Mark, it's Robert Macy, the portfolio holder for strategic housing and strategic planning. So,
excellent. And we've got a guest today. Nico, is Nico there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. I'm Nico Moby from Campbell to Cal.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, that's finished that section. So section 3 or item 3 is the minutes. I move that the minutes of the Housing Supervisory Board meeting held on the 5th of November 2020, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that. That's
Thank you, Simon.
Councillor Simon Jones. Yeah.
I will now accept these minutes as a true and accurate record unless anyone else indicates differently. Okay. Item 4 is public question time, but I don't think there's any public questions. Shelley, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's none.
Okay. Item 5 is member question times. I don't think there's any questions, but is there any questions, Shelley?
Again, yes, none have been received.
Okay. So swiftly moving on to item 6. So this is Conveyancing Developments Limited update report. Can I have the Assistant Director of Homes and Communities introduce herself and present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's Jane Trethewey here speaking. To provide you with this update on Conveyancing Developments Limited, really this is focusing on the key company activities. And you'll see in the report a range of work that's been undertaken since the last Housing Supervisory Board meeting is referenced. CDL has decided, along with Shropshire Council and Star Housing, jointly to put in bids for affordable homes grant funding. And this first grant bid has recently been submitted in relation to CDL's first development site at Frith Close in Cromwell. In terms of the staffing structure of CDL, I'm pleased to say that they've recently completed successful recruitment of 2 new posts into their team, and that is a sales and aftercare manager and a development officer. Sales and aftercare manager is particularly significant given the development progress that they've made and the obvious next steps that they will have to undertake in delivering their goals. They hope to recruit a company administration assistant shortly as well, to help them with their wider company administration activity. And the final point on recruitment is to bring in a senior commercial accountant to the team, which they expect to have in post in Q1 of 21-22. Members of HSB will recall that CDL held its virtual tour in December 2020. This was well received, and they have then been asked to undertake the same tour with all members in February of this year. So we hope that that will progress and be a useful way of illustrating the activities of the company to the broader council members. In terms of sustainability, you'll be aware that the council agreed a new climate change strategy framework at full council in December, with the goal of reducing the council's carbon footprint and also to establish the council as a leader in tackling the climate change crisis in its community here in Shropshire. And there is a goal to, as the council, to have its own greenhouse gas emissions reduced to net zero by 2030, a part of which will involve doing an annual carbon impact budget. CDL has committed itself to reducing its carbon footprint by building very sustainable homes and supporting local supply chain and also investing in new eco-efficient technologies. And alongside that, it's also committed to record its carbon footprint as a company for inclusion within the Council's wider annual carbon footprint statement. In terms of the COVID-19 context for current activity of the company, very pleased to say that the CDL team was asked to support the Council delivering a COVID vaccination centre at Ludlow Racecourse, and were given 5 working days to set up that centre with all logistical, operational and clinical matters their responsibility to deliver on in that setup. And they did this highly successfully, and the vaccination centre went live on the 2nd of February 2020, which was a really huge achievement from a standing start to having something up and running, and was very much welcomed across the board. The impact of the pandemic in terms of CDL's own activities are being monitored on a regular basis and being maintained through the strategic risk register for the company. But it would appear that in terms of the longer term impact for the company's sales, actually the Shropshire market is remaining buoyant. There are a lot of people choosing to move to rural communities, but in fact with a reduction of supply, actually many offers for properties being accepted are above the asking price, up to 5%. There are issues in terms of mortgage lenders tightening up their lending, and availability of mortgages are consequently a challenge for first-time buyers. So that may be an issue in respect of the Cornovy product range, which you'll be aware is targeted more towards those starter homes and not the sort of executive home end of the market. There are also some delays with conveyancing due to the end of the stamp duty holidays, which is due any time now. You'll be aware as well that discussions have been held about the private rented opportunities that are available, and this is something that CDL is continuing to explore. And in December, CDL commissioned a company called ARC4 to undertake a supply and demand assessment of the rental market in Shropshire in order to provide a context for decision making about this for the company. In addition to this, they are seeking tax advice from specialist tax consultants on the implications of moving into the private rented sector as a company. And they're also looking at the appropriate company structures and governance arrangements for the ownership of management of homes. And that's something that the council's looking at alongside them as well. In terms of the company's profile, marketing and branding has recently launched its new brand identity, its logo and corporate values. As part of this branding process, there are some clearly defined corporate values now, which are quality, service, community and sustainability. It has now established its digital presence and has Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn pages. And the digital channels that it's working through are also supported now by the company's website, due to go live any moment. And a successful social media campaign has generated good interest in the company and its upcoming developments, which is great news. Moving on to the sites in particular, the Cromwell site, which is the first development, has had Morris Property appointed as its main contractor, and they have issued them with a letter of intent to allow enabling and demolition works to get underway. And you'll be aware that Cromwell House demolition has happened in January, just gone. I'm very pleased to say as well that there have been over 40 expressions of interest registered by potential home buyers specifically for the Cromwell scheme, which I think bodes very well in terms of potential sales, although converting those into actual sales obviously is another matter. In terms of Ifton Heath, CDL have revised the site layout following feedback from planners, the parish council and children's services, and there is now a new site layout of 35 homes. They are retaining the existing schoolhouse on the site with some additional parking linked to children's services requests, and a planning application, planning approval rather, for Ifton Heath. A decision hopefully is anticipated in late spring. The Ellesmere Wharf site is for 23 homes, submitted in October 2020, and I'm very pleased to say that the Planning Committee just earlier this week gave approval to that planning application. So that's now the second CDL planning approval under the belt, which is good news. Pilstock Road in Whit is a site where CDL are meeting regularly with Brennig Construction and Resolve 106 in order to unlock a wider delivery of 500 homes across 4 phases, of which around 90 to 100 would be CDL units delivered by Brennig for CDL under a JCT design and build contract. And CDL have appointed architects to draw up the master plan and layout, which should come through later in the spring, following which an updated feasibility appraisal will happen. And the note here is that the biggest risk on this site is to do with the rising main on the site, and CDL are continuing to engage with Welsh Water to resolve that issue. And you'll see appended a series of site layouts to just indicate what's proposed on each of the 3 main sites that are coming forwards at the moment where layouts are provided. I'll leave that there for questions.
Okay, Cecilia Mockley, I see, is wants to ask a question. Cecilia?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Chairman. Jane, thank you for that. Interesting. Do you have any further analysis of the housing demand in Shropshire? I mean, it's interesting to see that it is buoyant at the moment. Am I right in thinking that there's interest in rural communities? Is there any analysis of demand in terms of location or housing type or profile of would-be purchasers? Because I think this is something that we really need to be tracking as much as we possibly can. It'll help us enormously, I think, with our future sites and current sites, come to that.
Mm. You're quite right, and this is something that as a property developer I expect CDL to be paying close attention to, because of course you must be building to the market in order to make sure that you sell well, but also Cornovy has been specifically given the task of filling the gap between what the market currently delivers and what actually a broader need is that we're aware of at the council. So it's kind of tracking that effectively and sort of placing CDL's proposals into that gap, and quite a lot of work goes on at CDL in relation to that in order to hit the right mark, so that the properties that are proposed are going to be actually saleable and desirable, as well as returning a profit to CDL in order to maintain the business, but also to meet housing need. I don't know if Harpreet would like to say anything further about the way that this is carried out.
Yeah, Councillor Motley, Harpreet Rayett here. At the moment, we do a lot of engagement with local agents. We've also got a number of a lot of software use, such as Land Insight, which gives us and tracks what's on the market, what's selling, and potentially what the the market value trajectory is. What we're tending to find as well within the market, it's probably things that you've heard echoed before, which is that there's a lot of 4 or 5 bedroom properties historically being built in Shropshire. So there is a real gap within the entry level area. In terms of where people want to move, because the housing market has been in such a state of flux since COVID, what we're getting from agents is that a lot of people do want to move in terms of the county lifestyle, but still be quite close to a large conurbation. Other people want the more rural lifestyle. So what we're finding generally is that there's a lot of interest, whether they're going through to sale. We're still a bit unsure, but a lot of interest in terms of moving to maybe some of our rural communities and close to some of our towns from people and organisation from people who live in big cities. And I think the final part is just how things will turn out post the COVID-19 crisis, in that most people assume that working from home will be the new norm. So people will be spending a lot more time at home in the future. So there will be less of a requirement for people maybe to live in big cities or towns near big cities for commuting purposes. So instead of commuting 5 days a week, you may commute 2 days a week. So that's in a lot of people thinking as well. So we think that if that's the trajectory in terms of working practices, we think that what we're seeing in the current market, especially within Shropshire, will continue.
Thank you, Harpreet. Chairman, if I could just ask Harpreet just one more question.
Okay.
That what you've told me is interesting, but none of that is new, if you see what I mean. Well, what I was trying to get at was whether you had managed to find any degree of granularity about whether there are particular parts of the county which are proving to be more popular for as it were, the COVID generation than other parts of the county. Because if that's the case, we need, it seems to me, to build up a very good information base of this so that we can actually plan accordingly with regard to our own investment in land. So I'm just slightly struggling here to find anything new in what you've told me, because we've been very much aware of the fact that rural communities have proved to be popular in the past. That doesn't seem to have changed any. We are also very much aware now of the increase in people wanting to work from home. Again, that hasn't changed much because there's been a trend for that even since before COVID. So I'm just asking you really, is can you tell us are there any surprises in the sort of interest that is being displayed here, or is it once more pressure on the rural communities, but at the same time demand not to be too far away from communication points so that they can get into places like Birmingham or Wolverhampton or London or wherever it happens to be? I'm trying to get that granularity from you, and I'm not sure whether you can provide it for me at this point.
I don't think I can. I think the key challenge for us is that the housing market since the crisis has been active maybe 7 to 8 months. So there's a lot of data and a lot of information still flowing through at the moment. So we think it will take at least another 12 months to really see the long-term impact of some of the changes that we've seen. However, the pattern remains, as you've already outlined, what we've historically seen within the county. However, there's it feels like it's being accelerated due to the crisis.
Okay, and can we have then reports, if not necessarily at every meeting, but updates from time to time as to how this is moving?
Yeah. Jane, do you want?
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. I think as councillors we all know that the first point of call for local people is to sign up with HomePoint, and I think we need perhaps another to get that name out there into the community so people are logged in, so we know what demand is amongst the local people. So I think we all need to do that as councillors. So Heather Kidd, would you like to you mentioned something on chat, would you like a question?
Yeah, well, I think my point was actually Right Home, Right Place does exactly do that. If we as local councillors make sure that Right Home, Right Place runs surveys, you get a very good idea of the sort of housing need that we have. And that's certainly true of my parishes, and they've done that, and it's given us a whole different viewpoint. So I think as councillors, Mark, we all ought to be looking at that because it works well. On top of that, most of mine will not sign up to HomePoint because there has never been any hope of a house. So they don't, it's only when a house comes up once in a blue moon that they suddenly scrabble around trying to get onto HomePoint and it's too late. So we do actually, as a council, need to do something about the versatility of HomePoint and how quickly it can work. It's only when a planning permission goes in that people actually then will sign up actually. So I think there's a lot of working we need to do with the council, and I'm sure Cecilia will agree that Canovi needs to make sure that the council systems work for it and the people who may be working with our houses. So where might we go with that one, please?
Shall I ask Mark Barrow whether he'd like to take a question on that, Mark?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think the points that are being well made here are also part of what you'll have seen go to Cabinet for the housing strategy on the 18th of January. And there was a range of kind of areas identified there, which I think the questioning is kind of heading towards. We always talked about the least affordable parts of Shropshire were down in the south, and that's where the biggest kind of gaps were. The interesting bit, Chair, is alongside that, when you look at the COVID-induced kind of recession, the highest growth in universal credit claimants and unemployment has been in the South Shropshire offices of Ludlow and Bridgnorth, DWP offices. So I think Cecilia and Heather, your line of inquiry is right. I think if you're following your nose, which is, are there some profound housing and affordability issues really growing in the south of the county? And I think the early indication is yes. Maria Howell, who's leading on some of our housing strategy work, has been asked to look at that. We're building a base of evidence, and I know Harpreet is cited on that. So very much, Chair, just sticking to the original challenge of how are we going to address unmet housing need. Excellent. Is there any more questions? I can't see anybody. I think that was quite a good discussion. I think we know where we are. If there's no more speakers, the recommendation is that the Housing Supervisory Board notes the Conveyancing Developments Limited update report. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Vince.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Simon. I don't think we need a vote on that, do we, Shelley?
No, that's fine, unless there's anyone saying anything different, but can't see anything, so that's fine.
Okay, thank you, excellent. So item 7 is exclusion of the press and public. I move that in accordance with the provisions of Schedule 12A, Local Government Act 1972, and paragraph 10.4 in brackets 3 of the Council's Access to Information Procedure rules, the public and press be excluded for the consideration of the remaining business.
I'll second that. That's
okay.
Simon Jones.
Thank you. So, that's the end of the live meeting. So I'm sure Shelley will remove everybody else.